Good evening-ish, everyone, and welcome to TriVersity Talk. I am Steven Bloomer-Teague.
And I am Wendy Stewart-Cablett, and I'm sure you're looking at your clock saying, what the heck are these two doing at 5 o'clock and not 7?
I'm looking at my clock, too, and wondering the same thing.
Well, great minds go along the same lines. But, sometimes with these shows, we run into scheduling conflicts, and Lord knows my life has been one big scheduling conflict. So we decided to offer up this great show tonight, 2 hours early. It's great. Right before dinner, you can sit down with a glass of wine or whatever your heart desires and watch TriVersity Talk 2 hours early. What could be better?
I don't know of anything that could be better. So yeah, Wendy, so what's been going on with you this week?
First of all, so there's always like too many things going on with me, right? I was very excited to have Felipe Rose on my Wednesday show, If These Walls Could Talk. Felipe Rose from the Village People, but really, I always like to give that as a reference, but really so much more. Incredible solo career that I just want to share with everyone. He's got a new hot single out called Dance Again, and why this single is so meaningful to me. You learn a lot about people on Facebook, and Felipe lost a lot of people personally during this pandemic, right? And he went and used that sadness and emotion, and he came out with a hot dance single. Okay, you're going to be hearing it everywhere. You can hear it on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's called Dance Again, and really, it's about all of us getting out there and dancing again, or metaphorically getting out there and living our lives. Which is right. What could be a better message than that?
Exactly. I love that. That's wonderful.
Well, how's your week been, Steven?
Oh, pretty good. Just kind of gearing up for the next TriVersity events. And while I'm on the subject of TriVersity events, on the 20th, TriVersity is doing a Transgender Day of Remembrance candlelight vigil. This is, I think, perhaps the most meaningful event we do all year.
Yeah.
We hope you can join us. This year, we're doing that at Milford United Methodist Church at 6 o'clock, and we'll convene at 5:45. We'll have some coffee, some hot cocoa, and some snacks, and then we'll dive into the vigil at 6 o'clock. So
really
we'd love to have you join us.
And something that is so incredibly meaningful. And with that being said, we are also doing a panel on this show for Transgender Day of Remembrance, featuring our own Simone Krause, Julie Gray Owen. Well, I almost said Julie Gray Taylor. Where the heck did I get that from? Francisco is going to be joining us, and the fabulous Kim Dorsey. Julie Gray Owen and Kim Dorsey and Francisco have both been, all three, on this show, and of course Simone has been
It's going to be a regular reunion of guests.
It'll be a reunion. And you know what? While we're talking, Steven, I just had this idea. If anyone who's watching wants to send in some topics that they think would be relevant, we're up for it. All of us who are going to be on are talkers, and we'd love to entertain what you're thinking too. Special shout out today. It is Veterans Day. To our own veterans, James Campistros, Victoria Parker, Stephen, who else? We have a bunch of people that are veterans. April.
Oh, yes. April Fredericks. I can't think of too many people off the top of my head, but I mean, I've just been really reflecting on the day and thinking about honoring LGBTQ veterans who not only sacrificed for their country, but also risked very personal harms for most of their tenure in the military, perhaps. So, I mean, very big shout out to all our veterans, but our LGBTQ plus veterans. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for serving our country. I think people all too often need to be reminded of that. So this is a perfect lead-in for our guest tonight, because honoring our veterans, honoring generations of LGBTQ people is really what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay. We have featured tonight the Generations Project, Kan Seidel and Wes Enos, connecting the LGBTQ community through writing and storytelling, that is such a unique thing, to bring all of the generations together. And what we're always talking about, how do we bring all those letters together? We're going to tell you how they build community and preserve LGBTQ history tonight. So please welcome the Generations Project.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for hopping on with us tonight. Was that an okay introduction?
It was so enthusiastic. I feel great. Thank
That
you.
was beautiful. Thank you.
We're all about enthusiasm here. And let's face it, with, what you've created with your non-for-profit, it's very unique, first of all. And I'm very excited, and so is Steven, that we were finally able to get you on the show, because so many of us know about the Generations Project, but so many don't, and through a show like this, we can reach out and say, hey, this is what we do. So whoever wants to start, I'd like you to take us from the very beginning, from when this was a little seed of an idea.
I guess I could start there. Hi, everyone. I'm Wes Enos. I'm the founder and executive director of the Generations Project. And I started the Generations Project basically as a community of friends in our mid to late 20s back in 2015, when we realized we really didn't have much opportunities to connect with older members within our LGBTQ community. And since LGBT history is not often taught in schools, or our families don't often speak to us about it, or this history is certainly not given to us when we come to terms with being LGBTQ or however we identify, how are we supposed to learn this history? So I talked about this with my friends, Kan being one of them, for a while, and the consensus was, let's create a storytelling show where older members in our community are the featured storytellers, to sort of bridge the gap between older and younger LGBTQ people, and also preserve our history through filming the storytelling events and humanizing this history and educating the younger generation. So that's how it really started. And then after it began, then it just started to grow. Having a community-based storytelling event really brought people from all walks of life within our community to our events. And our community started to grow we formed a board of directors. We started forming volunteer teams. We had MCs that were on Broadway that would spread the word in their community. The list goes on until we eventually developed a very important partnership with SAGE, the Older Adult Community Center. And this is sort of when Kan pulled me aside and said he has a lot of ideas for the Generations Project. And then ever since he joined the project, I guess probably a year or two, I mean, he was a volunteer from the very beginning, but he officially joined as our program director probably about 4 years ago.
And I remember meeting him when I did the workshop with you for 9/11. Kan was there.
That was the last workshop I participated in as just kind of like an independent coming in on the side. And after that one, I said, I have a bunch of ideas. Let me take on a bigger role. And ever since then, I've been organizing, producing our tons of workshops and all of our storytelling shows. And then through COVID, obviously, we moved virtual. And that just, for us, I mean, it sounds kind of bad to say, but for us, it really was an amazing thing because it allowed us to expand to other places where we never could have gone if we were only doing in person. Now we do these virtual programs that include, we have one of our regular writing party participants is in San Francisco, and we never would have met her if it wasn't for going virtual. So it's actually been great. But we are really excited to be going back to some in-person programs over the last few months too.
I have to tell you, I really appreciated the opportunity when you did offer what you had on Zoom. I think it was in San Francisco. I met, is it Coco? Is that her name?
Yeah, Miss Coco.
Coco.
Unbelievable. And there were other people. that I never would have met. Okay. And I'm in New York City now, but I have a weekend place in Pennsylvania, which is where TriVersity is located. Steven's there. I remember sitting on my deck with one of my housemates, Timothy Moreland, Steven, and we took Timothy and I took the workshop together. It was such an incredible experience. You gave us such an amazing gift with that. And the one thing I have to tell the two of you, when you were telling me how this idea came about, Wes, I hear all the time, especially a lot of my older, I guess my age, gay friends, that we laid the groundwork and now all of these kids are coming along and they don't care about what we did. And Steven, you've heard this too.
I mean, we talked about this last week with our guest,
Right.
and about how, I mean, as kids, how privileged we could have been to hear these stories. What you're bringing to us is so special. I mean, to have been a kid and known what people who were just a generation away from me, what they did and how they survived and how they fought against a deadly plague and their own government and came out on the other side. I mean, just think of how this could lift young gay boys like me. And I mean, and that extends into our present situation. We don't have to be at war with one another.
Right. Wes, what do you think? And Kan, you also, you were in your early 20s. What made you aware that you wanted to do this, that you thought it was important, right? That the history was really important and that reaching out to other generations was important. What is it in you that made you think that?
Well, history's always been a part of my life. My dad was a history teacher, and he just had this really uncanny way of bringing history to life. I unfortunately never was able to take his history class. He passed away before I was able to take it. But when I was living in San Francisco during college, I decided I wanted to study history by this one history professor I had that taught history through the perspective of non-white people, or minorities or ethnic studies, whatever you'd like to call it. And it blew my mind, like learning history of the Civil War through songs that former slaves used to sing.
Through other eyes.
And it just really blew my mind. And so I changed my major to history at my college in San Francisco State University, but they still did not have a single LGBT history program. This is back in 2005.
Right.
So I still studied history, but I never was able to take an LGBT history course. And when I'm living in New York, I moved to New York and I'm 25, 26, 27, and I'm around all this history, but I don't even know where to start. But I know enough that there are all these people who lived through all this history in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, still living all around me. So I just wanted to find a way to break through to them. And that's basically where the passion comes from. And it was just a lot of curiosity. I don't have any type of journalism background or anything like that, but I know how to ask questions. I know what my generation doesn't know because I didn't know it either. And I think that allowed me to approach it kind of softly and empathetically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that, I think it's also, you brought out that curiosity about it, which being in New York, you're surrounded, that's the beauty of a city like this. You're surrounded by everything. But New York is easy. I mean, with what you're doing, and now because you can offer things virtually, right? You can be anywhere in the country. Like Steven said, what he would have given to, have this opportunity when he was young coming in. Well, Steven's still young, excuse me. But, when you were very young, to have the opportunity to do this. Why storytelling? Why not like a big political play? So I come out of the late 60s and 70s. Okay. It wasn't about storytelling. It was about political, and then going into ACT UP, right? And pushing back and forming community that way. Why storytelling to form community?
That's a very good question. From the very beginning, storytelling was not my intention. I was literally ready to have people who are 70, 80, 90-year-old go up on stage and talk for 30 minutes about their lives. I thought that alone was interesting. I listened to others, and they convinced me that storytelling, the impact that of a polished story makes for better shows, better listening, better easier to edit afterwards. The whole shebang. I saw that within 5 to 7 minutes, we can help people develop a story in that time frame of 5 to 7 minutes, and that is probably even more captivating than 30 minutes of potential rambling. So that's, and I also learned the hard way. Like, our first event wasn't 5 to 7 minute polished stories. It was a lot of intergenerational discussion, and a form of storytelling where our, quote unquote, older storytellers weren't necessarily ready to share a polished 5 to 10 minute story. We had our MCs walk them through their story, which I really loved and appreciated, that younger perception of like helping someone share their story. But we've learned that that's not necessarily practical, and though we can still do that at times, why not teach people the craft of storytelling? Right. So it was our team of facilitators and videographers and Kan that really pushed us to follow the storytelling workshop format. So we reached out to the Moth, and they
asked that, right? The Moth,
us the craft, their storytelling craft, and we adapted their workshop to be our own, to include more dates, more intergenerationality, and to be entirely LGBTQ and about allyship, advocacy, all of that. For me, it was all, the storytelling part of it all was all through experience. That was not my intention at first. It was really about having older and younger person on stage, helping the older person's story be preserved.
I think that was where I kind of wanted to come in, and what I thought that I could bring to the table and help was seeing there's so much content there, and there's so much interesting history and so many experiences. But the reason I think storytelling is powerful is because of it's literally meant to, the reason we have an arc and we have a beginning and a middle and an end, and why we have a setup at the beginning, because that makes you expect what's going to come later. All of these little devices of storytelling that you see in movies or you read in novels, it's meant to absorb you and sort of suck you in, and you forget yourself and you inhabit the story. It's the best shortcut to empathy, to getting to feel and experience another person's walk of life that you don't get to, and it can't be explained to you. But if you create a story and you craft it in the right way, people from completely different backgrounds and experiences can, for those 5 minutes, feel like the emotions of it, feel like they did experience it, or have some closer sense of, I now know where you're coming from. So it seems, and sometimes when we're dealing with these really touchy subjects and it's very intimate and personal, it's like, it's hard to be that we need to get back on track and make sure that there's a plot line and that there's a progress and that we're coming back around to the motifs that we introduced at the beginning, and all of those kind of structural things can feel a little like bad teacher or mean teacher.
Right, structure, right.
But when you get to the end and you have that outline structure, then all of the emotions and all of the heart can emerge. But having that structure is it's just the way to kind of get into the listener and the audience, and it's what people have come to expect of a show when they're going to let themselves kind of suspend disbelief, enter into the realm of imagining, allow their emotions to be kind of tapped into. So I think that is the difference between, say, getting up and giving a talk or writing an essay. Storytelling really taps into the emotions in the listener.
And nothing for nothing, it helps people remember, right? I mean, I remember a good story over a talk that might have a lot of great factual information, but if I hear a story and I'm involved, like you say, with the emotions, I'm going to remember it.
Right.
It's just going to have more of a deeper impact. I just think this is such a genius concept.
It is genius. I love what you said about, I'm going to pull this phrase from you, but I will always quote you when I use it. Shortcut to empathy. My God, if that isn't something that we are, well, I could, on a broad base, we're lacking it just as civilization right now. But within our own community, and we talk about this a lot on the show, I do find it particularly upsetting, the polarization of the L's, the G's, the B's, the Q's, the T's, the pluses. You know, this one doesn't like that one, and what you've come upon. And by the way, you all are the only ones I know that have come upon it. You have found a way not only to bridge generations, but to bridge all those letters. I think that is brilliant. During COVID, Steven did a storytelling event for our organization. It was people's, personal stories. And to me, Steven, that was one of the most poignant things that we did. You remember what people said, and it was because of what you said. It was a shortcut to empathy. So how do we take like what you do and get it out there? This is a loaded question, on a more political level. All right. Because as a community, we all need to work together. And I feel now more than ever, I'm seeing the polarization in the United States of America, which, by the way, I thought was unique to hear till I started talking to people at the UN and finding out this division is happening all over the world. How do you think we could use this to better understand each other?
I think if you have ever had an experience with someone who was of the more conservative, or regarding LGBTQ, more closed-minded, or even outright prejudice, discriminatory against, the thing that is the common denominator of changing those hearts and minds oftentimes is just either knowing or meeting or having someone from your own family emerge as that. It's just having a person that you are forced to see as a human tell you, hey, I'm that, or I have that experience, that thing that you think you don't like, I'm that. Do you not like me? And that's what changes people's minds. So, I mean, we would love, and it's something we've definitely made an effort to expand in our programs going virtual. When we do a program that's like a writing workshop type of experience, or even just our speakers and our storytellers, we want non-LGBTQ people to come as well. They need to hear these stories as much or more. It's amazing for us to feel our own history and feel our own culture being conveyed, but it really is as simple as just feeling the heart of someone that's different than you. That's what changes everything. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't require, political action in the sense of protesting or picketing. Like, it's kind of more infiltrating into the heart. Again, like a shortcut to empathy. If you can just kind of get past the political talking points of it and let someone feel care and the emotions of what that other person has been through, I think that really is, that's how the world will change. And
agreed.
Just a matter of getting people to sit down and listen. And that's kind of the hardest part. And we're willing to take tips, or if good ways. I mean, we've had some success. I think we've definitely, over our virtual programs, had more non-LGBT people come and participate and watch our shows. And we've got really great feedback. We've had parents of trans children come and just talk about how much they learned, and just by hearing an adult or an older trans person talk about their experience, they're like, my ability to parent my child now is completely, through the roof. I've learned so much that's useful. And I think everyone will pretty much feel that way if they just listen. And that's why we work really hard on having them, like Wes was saying, a concise package. Like, who could say no to a 5-minute story that's like interesting and has a plot line that's like suspenseful and what it's going to happen next? Like, it gets you on the edge of your seat, and there's spicy details. Sometimes there's some sexy details. There's tragedy. There's laughter. So we're hoping that like the entertainment factor can be a way to get people to look at something they normally wouldn't want to.
Right. And it makes them engage within the story. How have you dealt with challenges like trust issues? And I can only personalize this when I was in one of your workshops, like the very first, it was putting stuff out there that was very private. I can do it much easier than many people, but it's like nobody knows you from Adam or Eve when they come into the workshop. And then you're asking them to go deep into their gut and spill it. Do you have a certain, what do you think allows you to do that?
I was really worried about that when we moved to virtual, because I think there's just a little more of you don't have that warmth of a hug when you first meet and gathering close near each other. And even just maybe just a feeling of like, who else could be watching this video stream that we don't know is here, versus like being in a room together. I was worried that people would have a harder time going there, but I think it's just, I mean, we do try and approach it through a gradual process where the first question is not going to be like, talk about your childhood traumas. The first question might be, what'd you have for breakfast today? Just to break that ice of like speaking in front, because for some people, just saying what you had for breakfast in front of 10 other people is enough to like make your throat close up and you start sweating and you're like, I have to talk now. So kind of breaking down slowly, gradually, and giving prompts and questions that are kind of easy and accessible, but still able to be elaborated on and be creative. Like, if you were a type of plant, what would you be? Would you be a cactus? Would you be a willow tree? Someone who's shy could just give a one-word answer. Someone who's ready to open up could go into the detail of, I'm a house plant that hasn't been watered in weeks. Exactly. So I think giving, easing into it is a big part of it. And then the biggest thing really is, in my opinion, the workshop atmosphere itself, the idea that we're in this together and it's a collaborative effort, and I might be the facilitator or someone else is leading, but whoever is leading is really just suggesting what we do next. And it's not about a teacher and students. It's not about listening and following instructions. It's really meant, and as we develop stories, we really encourage, what did you hear in Wendy's story that you liked? Or what did you want to know more about? Or what are you curious about? We want people to invest in each other. And the more they see each other being vulnerable, I mean, that just makes it a million times easier to
It's the vulnerability, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. It's taking off those layers. I have to ask both of you, do you have any kind of background, like psychology, or because you're dealing with all of that with this? You really are. You're going down deep, and you're messing with people. You're messing with people. And up here, I left that workshop that we did for 9/11. Every single one, I left completely screwed up when I got home. My head was spinning because I dragged up things that I had buried. All right, and it literally, I would leave there, and it took 2 hours to come down from it. And I would spend the rest of the week thinking about it. That's powerful stuff to be able to do that to someone. So do you think anything in your backgrounds prepared you for this?
I mean, I've always had an interest. I minored in psychology. I never thought I was in the back of my mind, I always thought it would be fun to be a therapist or psychoanalyst or something. And I'm a Virgo. I honestly think that's the biggest thing. I'm a Virgo. Like, all my friendships in life, I want people to tell me everything. And I'm like, let's troubleshoot. Like, but what did he, when some people tell a story, some people are like, okay, get to the end. I'm like, give me more detail. I've always been that way. I want to dig into it. I'm just curious. And I love talking it out and helping people process through things with my friendships. That's always been just kind of how I am. So for me, it's very natural. It is, again, it's like, I think of it more almost like what I've heard that AA meetings are like, where it's very about the community. And so I don't rely on myself necessarily needing to be the expert, because it's about supporting each other. And we do always throughout a workshop process say if anyone needs to reach out between sessions or to talk anything out or vent.
Right.
And I mean, surprisingly though, I think most people, it is just healing. Just to get something out of your system and kind of purge it out verbally is the healing process for a lot of people.
Right.
What's your experience with that?
For me, I definitely helped start the organization, not by being a natural storyteller, because I do not consider myself one of those natural storyteller types. I'm definitely more of a listener type, and I think that is what helped me start the project in general. And I think, through listening, it's all about empathy, right? And by being a good listener and you're listening to people's stories, it creates that comfortability when you're able to actually feel what they're saying. And definitely at the beginning, the first couple of years of starting the Generations Project, when we were working specifically with older people, that was very difficult because a lot of people hadn't talked about the AIDS epidemic in 30 years, and a lot of people didn't talk about walking down the St. Patrick's Day parade in 91 or 95 and getting soda cans thrown at them,
or laying down in front of St. Pat's during the moment.
Yeah,
I remember all of that.
I have had such heavy moments with these people as they cry to me, as they are facing this potential moment where they will share their story. And I think if it were me also wanting to go share my story up on stage with them, it would have been completely different. So I think I just was able to listen, hear what they were saying, and find the right like-minded people like Kan and others who have that same empathy and can, if I can speak to them, my team, then I know they can speak to our storytellers.
Right.
I mean, that's a key component to the storytelling. You've got to have listeners, you've got to have storytellers, and you've got to have listeners. I mean, who's hearing the stories? That's very important. Right. And for people to listen and take in that knowledge is extremely important.
How do you think working with so many different kinds of people has changed each one of you as a person? You've been doing this for how long?
The whole Generations Project's been 6 years.
6 years. Wow. We turn 7 next June.
So, wow. Well, congratulations. How do you think it's affected you? You're taking in people's deepest emotions, all right? And you're wearing them. And there's no way you can walk away unscathed from that. Some of the things that I've heard. How has it changed you, and how do you deal with it?
I think a big thing for me has been learning different people's communication styles, aside from whatever the content of their story is, just the way that they want to share themselves. And, when I came in and kind of took over the curriculum of the workshops, I was like, here, we're going to be a little more structured and we're going to make sure that everyone's following it this certain way. And I think it was one of the first workshops I did was a dad's theme for Father's Day. And we had a woman who participated who it was stunningly gorgeous artwork, what she was creating. It was poetry. It was so lyrical and abstract and dreamlike. And the first workshop, I wasn't ever like butting heads with her or anything, but I was like, how are we going to like wrangle her into the format? And then by halfway through the process, I was like, these don't need to be constraints. These are kind of guideposts that can help people where they need the help, but to allow people to flourish within it and use what they need to use, but to let it be expressed in their own unique way. That's been something really important for me to learn as a somewhat controlling Virgo. And then
kudos to you though, that you were able to do that. As you started to tell this story, I wanted that to be the ending, that you knew that those constraints had to go because you looked at the individual who was
right, which is the whole point of what we're doing. So to try and force everyone into some uniform structure. I was like, oh my God, this is,
what am I doing?
I'm the man. I'm the evil man.
The evil Virgo.
So I stopped myself. But then, yeah, just hearing the stories themselves too from these different people of different backgrounds, I've just been so many times like overcome with chills and shivers and just like, I never thought I could, you can watch movies and you hear about all these things and we talk about all these things, but there's something about watching a person. I mean, people who attend our shows, I think, get a taste of it, but getting to be through the process of the exploration and the development of the stories and seeing people throw things out there that maybe won't end up in the final version, but you get to kind of see how they're working through and digging into what did that thing mean in my childhood? How is that still affecting me? It's just, I don't even know how to put it in words, but it's definitely given me just such a bigger, broader appreciation for ages, racial backgrounds, all the different letters of the LGBTQ, people from different countries telling about what it was like being gay in Tunisia, like all these different things that I sort of intellectually knew, but you don't know until you hear someone
their story
right in front of you. Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing that you have been privy to so much of that. I'm curious, has corporate ever reached out to you to run these workshops in various corporations? Because I think you all are onto something that nobody else is onto.
Yeah, corporate has been our saving grace with COVID. Actually, if it wasn't for corporate employee resource groups reaching out to us, and in some part us reaching out to them, we wouldn't have been able to really survive the COVID pandemic. We weren't able just to pivot digitally without some kind of support. So we created a whole program packet of virtual programs for employee resource groups with corporate groups.
This is so brilliant.
And they've been so much fun, and Kan has done a brilliant job at making them fun and captivating. They range from intergenerational writing parties to curated storytelling events to just one-off fun storytelling hour with Q&A afterwards with one storyteller. And they've been very fruitful for us. And because of them, we're able to offer free programs at the older adult community centers. We're at 4 community centers and producing these free events. And as you know, we produce in-person free events as well. It's really thanks to these groups that stepped up to help us. And the way we approached them was, with Pride marches being canceled during COVID, why don't they put their money where their mouth is, where they can, pay for a program, a Generations Project program, where we're able to bring together an intersectional group of storytellers, facilitators, actually help pay people in our community that are doing the work and whose stories impact us and helped us to get to where we are today.
Who came up with this business plan? It's absolutely brilliant.
I'm not going to take all the credit, but I did say during 2020, when obviously Pride was canceled and everything, and all the conversation was around sort of performative activism or disingenuous corporate activism, I was like Wes said, let's reach out to these people and let's say, do you want to do something actually meaningful? You don't need to get a rainbow pen and hand them out. Like, that's not changing anyone's lives. Why don't you, not only are we for the first time ever able to pay honorariums to these amazing storytellers and elders from our community who did all this amazing work, but also for their staff, including non-LGBTQ people, to get to see and be transformed by the empathy and the entertainment as a shortcut to empathy via these stories. It's been amazing. We've done, I don't know if we're allowed to name drop, but we've done some like really big.
You can totally name drop.
We've done. It's kind of almost like crazy. I can't believe it. But we have ongoing programs with Google, and we've done with their Google European and Middle East branch as well. Twitter,
Wow.
we've done international programs with all 3 of their time zones where their offices are. You were talking about, it's Veterans Day, so we did a LGBT veterans show with Verizon a few months ago. All these big corporate entities that, within them, they have it's called, I never knew this before this past year, but their ERG, or Employee Resource Group. They want these programs. They're starving for these programs. They try and they bring their group together, and it's a little awkward. And what do we do? Do we try and like play Pictionary on Zoom? And we're like, no, we will bring you something that's so engaging, and you get to hear a storyteller, and then we will provide the discussion prompts or the talking points that will like get the juices flowing. And like what I said earlier, some of them can be really easy, of just like, describe yourself as a plant or whatever. And then it gets progressively a little more profound and a little more personal. So by the end, I really think, it's shocking that in a work environment, these people are willing to be that vulnerable with each other, but they are. And I think that they form bonds and get to know each other on a level that
They never would have.
They never, no matter how many happy hours in person they would have gone and had beers after work or whatever, they would not have broached these topics and gone this deep and talked about like what happened to me in middle school or whatever, and they really go there. We did a storytelling show with Peloton that was about first times. And that was just like, the vulnerability that these people were willing to have in front of their colleagues was just stunning and beautiful. And the feedback that we've been getting from all these programs is so encouraging. And I really feel like the sky's the limit, because I do think not only the intergenerational storytelling of having elders come and share their stories, but just like using that as the catalyst to get people to tell their own stories and be vulnerable with themselves and feel okay with sharing something personal, is magic. It game changer. It really is undeniable, the effect that it has and the enthusiasm that it generates. Like the organizers of these events, like, can't deny it. It's just like, wow, that was amazing. Everybody loved it.
I think what I love most about hearing about this is the Pride March in New York had become so controversial. Steven and I had somebody on the program that talked a lot about that. And it was about, we don't want these corporations anymore. They've got no business. The people need to take it back. There was all that. And this year, I don't know if the two of you were in the city, but we did have a march this year, and not the official NYC Pride March, the what they were calling the alternative march. But there was so much bad mouthing against the corporations, the floats, the this, the that, how they had taken and really destroyed what Pride was. But yet I'm listening to what you're saying, and you are onto something here. You are working, okay? Instead of just getting out there and saying, we don't want this, we're artists, we want it to be what it was when it started, blah, 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 And I was probably one of the ones that said, yeah, maybe it's become too corporate, but I couldn't offer a solution. You're here tonight saying what a brilliant solution is to this. Look what you did within the community, and you did it in big corporations, the very corporations that they're talking about having floats and, all the commercialism that the march had become. So really, congratulations for what you've done. That's making a big, big difference in what's out there. I'm really blown away, because I only knew what you did with workshops. I didn't know that it went, now you're talking human resources and going into companies, and it's a big game changer. And at the end of it, not only bringing LGBTQ together closer, but bringing people that are working together closer, being aware of empathy, making people aware of each other's feelings, which is, I think, a place we all need to start to go to these days, because of what's going on in the rest of the world and where we've evolved to right now.
Absolutely.
So what's your plan like going forward? You must have all kinds of cool things planned.
Yeah. Well, we have a really cool event tomorrow. It's our Queer Love Storytelling Show
Yay.
at the Eagle, Friday, November 12th. Doors open at 6:30, and the show will begin at 7. And then now every month we have virtual writing parties that are for people all over the world, really. But we have a third Thursday writing party with Sage, the older adult LGBTQ community center.
Senior action in a gay environment. Say
Yes. That was their acronym from the 90s. So we have a third Thursday writing party with that 80 Windsor Sage Center. We do first Fridays with the Bronx Sage Center. We're starting last Wednesday of the month with Brooklyn Community Centers. We're starting hindmost Monday writing party with Portland Sage, Oregon, Pacific Northwest queer people. And then we have our second annual Jenny Awards, which is an annual storytelling award ceremony that Kan has helped put together. That'll be sometime in January in Hell's Kitchen, New York.
So that'll be a live event.
It's going to be in person. Our first annual one was virtual, obviously, but we're going to be in person.
Yay!
And it's going to be our version of like the Grammys or the Oscars. So we will even have like for the most heart-wrenching story, and we'll show little 10-second clips from 5 nominees from their actual stories that they did over the last year.
That's so great.
And then there'll be a winner, and everyone's a winner, but we have a little, like, it's like a little gramophone, but with a mouth because it's storytelling. So we have a little award. It's a lot of fun, and it's a way to make sure that everyone feels honored and just feels how big and how important and special the willingness to be one of our storytellers is. Like, none of this would be possible if there weren't people who were brave and vulnerable to get up on stage and lay it out, you know?
It's tough.
It's tough. Not easy.
You had asked me to come to Sage to help with the, it was a transgender event.
Oh, yeah. You helped facilitate one of the writing or the workshops. Yeah.
And the stories that I heard from some of those people that night will stay with me for forever. Okay. They were not easy stories. And it made me as a person a lot more. And by the way, I'm open. Just holler. I'm there for you. For anything live, I would totally do it again because it so changed me as a person. You know, I grew up in New York, and transgender community here for me was very different than the people that you would see working the streets. And when you hear those stories firsthand, it is really, and the fact that they were willing to share them, they don't know me from Adam. I'm a good person. You know, I try, but they don't know me, and the amount of trust that was involved in that and being able to try and help them craft the story. Wow. So I just want you to know that was tremendous to be able to really take part of that. I'm curious about the two of you. First of all, you are both incredible activists, incredible advocates, without screaming, yelling, waving, or any of those things, making a huge freaking difference on a level that it needs to be made on. So thank you for that. Did you both grow up like in incredibly positive homes, you know, where when you came out, everything was okay? We talked to so many different kinds of people on the show. Everyone's had a different experience. I'm curious about your experience.
I think Kan and I probably grew up in relatively conservative homes, and we grew up probably similarly in fear of being gay. But my own personal experience, I was prepping myself my whole life to say goodbye to my family when I came out, and assumed they wouldn't want to see me again.
Are you? Well, you are blowing me away with this information. I can't. Wow.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a Lutheran household, and my mom is sort of one of those conservative Democrats, I guess, if you will. And, you know, at least, you know, but, you know, I guess when I came out, the complete opposite happened. I had been prepared to like never see them again, and told them that's what I was assuming, and they responded completely the opposite way. So I was approached with maybe not necessarily acceptance, but tolerance. And I guess that was enough for me. My expectations were so low.
And always hold the benchmark low, and then there's nothing you can't have.
And I was moving to San Francisco. Like, I literally came out to everyone the week leading up to my moving to San Francisco, and that was it. I knew once I was there, I would find my way, and I didn't, wasn't needing my family for support or anything like that. So that's my perspective. I don't. Kan, what about you?
Mine was, I was raised Catholic. My parents were very involved in the church. I was the altar boy, all of that. And
all of that, right.
Yeah. But I also was always very loved. I hate to say it, but I was somewhat of the favorite.
How many?
And they loved me so much, which in a way made it harder, because I was like, oh, they love me so much, this will be the ultimate disappointment.
Wow. How many were how many siblings do you have?
Just two other siblings, older sister, younger brother.
Okay, but you were in the middle child.
Yes, and I was the goody two shoe. I was the overachiever. I was always straight A's, blah blah blah. My sister was running around drinking. My brother was running around doing drugs, and I was like, I shouldn't say that publicly. I was like, I was the beloved one, but yeah, and it wasn't. I think Wes, what you said, tolerance versus. We actually did a workshop on the idea of tolerance versus acceptance, and we talked a lot about like coming from our families, how that feels, and I definitely got that for several years. It was, okay, I still love you, of course I still love you, but I'm disappointed and this isn't what I want. That was what I got from my family. But I think it was, for me, I just came out of the gates bucking so hard, because when I did come out, it was like all of this untapped potential that I had been wasting on hiding in the closet. I used all my Virgo powers to like hide and to conceal and to monitor myself and censor my behavior and censor my movements and like move robotically, because if I let myself be free, I might accidentally like have a limp wrist or something, So when I finally let that all go, all of this artistic, creative,
boom,
just blossomed out of me, and I just felt like unlimited potential that had, and it's now I'm 34, so it's been many, many years since I came out at 19, but I still feel like I'm catching up from all that wasted time. And so I just still have this energy of like, let's go, let's be gay, let's be queer, let's be, enthusiastic with it.
I don't think people always fully get that. Like when I came out of the gate, my mom was like, why is it all gay all the time? It's because I've never had any. And this is
right.
Okay, I love it. All gay all the time.
Exactly. And to your other question earlier, you asked about like where we're going forward. And I think, like Wes said, we have this show at the Eagle, but we also, in June, we had 2 shows. And in October, we had a show at the AIDS Memorial.
I remember that. I couldn't go to that. I wanted to.
Yeah, so I think it's about, and our show at the Eagle is called Queer Love, Cruising, Dating, Sex, and Freedom. And we have stories about BDSM and leather kink community. We have stories about a lesbian transforming into a queer person the first time she experienced pegging a man. We have very sexy, naughty, spicy stories, and it's a fun change of pace from obviously the stories that we had at the AIDS Memorial were so powerful and heartwarming and inspiring and heart-wrenching, but a little bit heavier. We were talking about, we were hearing stories from long-term survivors, and there was a lot of tears. And so I think we're finding ways to strike that balance. No matter what show you come to, it'll be entertaining. You'll be on the edge of your seat, but finding that balance of these more fun, light, exciting, spicy types of topics, which is such a huge part of what the queer community is. Obviously we're funny, we're hysterical, we're wild, we're outside the box. We have all of that. We have tragedy in our story as well. We have,
because that's it. It's everything.
Right.
But queer community is quite amazing.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
we're moving forward into 2022. You can expect to see a variety of those types of topics, from more, I guess, heavy, you might say, to more light. And that's what we strive in each of our individual workshops too, is to like touch on that range. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I have to say, the fact that you're doing this at the Eagle, you're bringing in storytelling events to the Eagle, which I've been familiar with for years. And I think I told you earlier, I'll go into any gay bar. I'm welcome in any gay bar. I don't feel good there. So maybe it'll change the stage picture there a little bit, Maybe it will. And once again, you're using your advocacy, your activism in such a positive way through entertainment, vulnerability, and empathy to change the stage picture there. And I think that's a great idea. So how do people find out about you? I want you to tell people where they can donate, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, well, I just changed my name below to my email, so Kan, maybe you could do that as well.
Thank you.
Figure it out.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
please, we rely on donations from the community to keep our organization afloat and keep us evolving and improving. You can make a tax deductible donation at thegenerationsproject.org, and then you can also go to thegenerationsproject.org to find out more about the Generations Project or events, or send us a message. We also have a Facebook, thegenerationsproject.com/thegeneration, or facebook.com/thegenerationsproject.org, and then an Instagram as well, which is called the Generations Project. Kan, am I missing any other?
I mean, I think just a shout out to, if anyone listening wants to share a story or has a story to share or knows someone that you think, oh my gosh, this story needs to be shared, you can nominate a friend, put us in touch. We do these workshops, like I said, virtually for the most part now, even if like this show at the Eagle is in person tomorrow, but the workshop leading up to it was virtual. So even if you don't end up wanting to share it at one of our events and you just want to go through the process of developing a story, we do these 4-week workshops regularly throughout the year. And it's a really rewarding process to do it with the community. So anybody who's interested in contributing or donating in the sense of sharing your story, we are happy to have those types of donations too. And you can just send us an email and we'll invite you to whatever's coming up next.
Love it. It's all good. So we've reached the point in the evening where you get to take center stage, which is something you're used to. And either one of you can start, you get to have your moment in the sun and say whatever it is you want to say right now. There you go. It's showtime.
You want to say anything, Wes?
Oh gosh, well, I'm so not the person for these type of things, but I will just encourage everyone out there just to be yourself as much as possible. There's a world waiting for you if you're afraid of being yourself, that it will welcome you for who you are. And the Generations Project may be that community that, we welcome everyone. We love everyone. We have a team. If you don't see Kan or myself representing you, someone on our team certainly represents you. And find out more at thegenerationsproject.org.
Perfect.
I'll say quickly, as an English major writer person, I want to just say, because we have a lot of people who participate in our programs who are nervous and say, I'm not a writer, that's not what I can do, that's not my skill set. And I just think a lot of people have had an amazing transformation in confidence from realizing that they can. And it's not about, no one's expecting you to sit and write a book. Just trust yourself to just get on your computer and type and just free associate, just write whatever stream of consciousness or in a notebook. Let yourself do it occasionally and just see what comes out of you. And you'll be surprised at what you're able to express and how good it feels to create in that way.
Right. And I'm just going to jump on top of that. That is one of the techniques you use that for me was so pivotal. Even the summer one, when I sat on my deck and you gave us things to do, and it was stream of consciousness. And I ended up writing a piece that I meant to send to you and I didn't. And it's somewhere in this house. It was good. I even thought it was good. And I'm like, my God, I wrote that because of what you did. You're both incredible catalysts, and thank you for everything that you do for the community, really.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Wendy, for everything you've done with us and before us, and will continue to do. And it's so great meeting you, Steven, too. Thank you
Absolutely.
both.
Oh, and Wendy always takes
Yeah.
a picture before we sign off. Okay, right into the camera. Cheese. And one more. Good. Posterity, as they say.
All righty, everyone. Well, thank you so much for
you so
watching,
much.
and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you, Generation Project. Love
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.